And so good morning and welcome to this Jersey Chamber of Commerce private session where we're talking indeed about EU goods and customs and what we're going to see coming forward. Very shortly we'll meet our panel. In fact, we'll be able to see them very, very shortly. We're going to be talking to not only the Minister for External Relations, Senator Ian Gort, but also to the Acting Director of Customs, Jersey Customs, and the Assistant Director as well. That's Luke Goddard and also Paul Ecobichon. Welcome both. It's good to have you both with us and thank you for joining us. We've got plenty of questions coming in and just a little bit of housekeeping for those who are joining us at the moment. If you do have any questions which are customs related to Brexit, and we've got quite a few already, then go on to Slido. Slido.com. You can do it on your mobile phone. You can do it wherever you want. There, you'll see it all up there. Go on to Slido, and then you can. And there's actually, you can scan the QR code if you want to. The passcode for it is #BeyondBrexit. And if you do that, you'll see the questions which are coming up already, and we'll take that very much as the questions that we're going to be starting with in just a few seconds' time. Just to get ourselves underway and to understand this a little bit more, let me first of all bring in Paul Ecobichon, the Assistant Director at Jersey Customs, and say good morning, Paul. First, we've done a couple of these sessions before. It seems that we're learning more and more as time goes on. We are less than 50 days away from 2021. Are you fairly confident that we're prepared and people are getting to understand the new changes which will impact on them?
Yes, thanks, Murray. Morning. I think since the first time that we spoke some weeks ago, I think the awareness has grown considerably. And we are more confident now than maybe we were 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, that businesses were beginning to take notice of what they needed to do. So we're on the way, I think, moving in the right direction, but there is still a degree of uncertainty, clearly, with the outcome of the negotiations with the EU. But I think businesses, too, are still fairly slow to wake up to some of the changes that might be needed. But we've made progress, definitely.
Okay, in terms of there being a deal or not being a deal, what difference will that make?
In many respects, the difference is down to whether tariffs are imposed or not. So a no deal will mean that tariffs are imposed, and that could be on up to 87% of goods. That will attract a tariff rate, potentially. If there's a no deal, then the amount of goods that will attract tariffs could be somewhere in the region of 45 to 50%. But deal or no deal, what is for certain is that the bureaucracy, if you like, the administration will increase. There will be more customs formalities. There will be the need for customs declarations. So there is definitely an element of non-tariff barriers that will come into play, which businesses need to prepare for, regardless of the outcome.
Okay, that preparation. Let's just talk about the preparation. What exactly do businesses need to prepare to do? There will be businesses that have never done this before. There will be businesses that will be quite experienced in this. So just in basic terms, the difference is going to be that you're going to need to make a customs declaration for each item that you're bringing into Jersey. Would that be a correct assumption?
That's right, yes. I mean, you need to understand your supply chains to fully understand what you're going to need to do. So if your goods are transiting through the UK, you may be able to use a UK agent or a customs agent to clear your goods into the UK. If the goods come directly to Jersey from the EU, then again, you as the importer are going to have to do the customs declaration, or again, you can use a customs agent. If you're just bringing in your goods straight from the UK, where there's no suggestion that they've originated in Europe or any other third countries, then things aren't really going to change a great deal.
Right, a lot of questions coming in on Slido. Thank you, and please do keep them coming in. And as the conversation evolves, it'll be great to have more questions coming in on Slido. So do look at that Slido screen there. Let's take that top question up there, which is, will direct trade with the UK be affected? Now, you've alluded to this already in that if the goods didn't originate in the EU, but the chances are a lot of goods will. And actually, there's questions coming in from motor trade as well, which we'll come to in a moment. So if the goods have come in from the EU and have landed into the UK and then are coming down to us, what complications does that bring?
I suppose there are two possible routes here. The first is where the trader or business in Jersey arranges for those goods to ship down to Jersey in transit, which means any duties are suspended for that period. And then the importer goes on, makes the customs declaration and pays the relevant duties. The other possibility is that the goods are cleared into the UK and they are then in free circulation within the UK. But whoever does that is obviously going to be paying the tariffs, if there are any, and the administrative fees of doing that. So there'll be overheads. So if in the second example, where the goods are cleared into the UK and come down to here, what traders may see here is an increase in the cost of the goods that they're buying from their UK supplier.
So goods are likely to go up in price on one way or another. And I guess that's a message to businesses at this stage, which is not a customs message as such, but something that's starting to sink in is that goods are going to cost more to bring to the island. Would that be a fair assumption?
I would say that is a fair assumption. Of course, that is based on whether there's a deal or no deal to some extent as well.
Yeah, depending on whether there's tariffs or not. We'll come on to tariffs in just a second. And for those who've just joined us, thank you very much indeed for doing so. If you've got questions, Slido is exactly where you go for those, and we'll refer back to some of those in just a second. In fact, I've had other questions coming in, and let's dash between some of the ones that I've got on Slido and some that have been emailed directly to us as well. Where do we get information? Because whilst we're talking about all of this, people will be saying, yeah, that's all great, but I've just watched the webinar and now I can't remember a single thing. So obviously they can go back and watch this again. There'll be a recording. But is there a site that people can land on and work their way through the preparation they need?
Yes, there's the Beyond Brexit Trade page, Trade Ready page, which has a number of links to customs-related guidance and information that we'd really urge people to take a look at. There's a fairly hefty document in terms of the Jersey border operating model, which explains importers' responsibilities, exporters' responsibilities. It also, considers the impact on EU traders, importers and exporters, because our traders are going to have to speak to them as well. That's a useful document and one I think people should familiarise themselves with. There are a few other links there as well that are well worth looking at. We will be putting a lot more onto gov.je in the coming weeks, again, which delves a little bit deeper into the detail. And of course, we're always available for to contact via email. Or to actually come in and have a conversation with us face to face, COVID allowing, so that we can point business in the right direction. So there is a fair amount out there. If you try and search on the UK sites, particularly with HMRCs, it's not particularly easy to relate that to local circumstances. So certainly in the first instance, I'd direct people to those pages. And I think there's also a Brexit Checklist, which is also on gov.je, again, which is a really useful landing point for traders to look at and gives them an idea of some of the things they might need to consider.
There is an awful lot to consider. I know you've got the acting director, Luke Goddard, alongside you there. When it comes to this, how I'm trying to phrase this in the politest way. How ready is Customs? Customs have been working on this for an awful long time. You've been engaging with Chamber for a great deal of that time. But I just wanted to consider if people are going to phone Customs up, you're busy enough as it is at the moment, dealing with all sorts of other lines of work that you do at Jersey Customs. Is there a specific area here, Luke, that people can go to in Customs and ask for help?
Good question. We're anticipating a busy period probably from now for the next 9 months or so, leading into the second half of next year, as the changes that are going to affect both people and goods coming into and moving through the UK and the EU, where some people have never potentially encountered what they're going to have to do in terms of both customs and immigration procedures. So we have resourced as best we can the areas that are going to get affected, particularly Paul's and the area I'm looking after, immigration at the moment. But it would be false economy to start employing hundreds more people when it's really just getting through this transition period. So I would urge people to get in touch, but bear in mind the resources that we have are going to be stretched. So please make use of the information that we have on the websites in the first instance, and only really if you get those difficult areas that you can't find your own answers to come to us. I would also urge people to email those requests before making the phone calls. We will try to respond as quickly as possible. The inboxes are already starting to pile up just as a result of this week, which is good. We want people to engage, we want people to come to us, and we want to provide the answers as best we can. So we will be there to do that. There's some additional staff that have been put in place to answer phone calls and emails. So we've got in place what we feel we have, what we can at the moment, and to respond.
Okay, I'll check back with you in terms of email addresses and phone numbers and the like a little bit later on. Senator Gorse, as the Minister for External Relations, good to have you with us as well. It seems like there's a meteorite heading for Jersey with Brexit as a name on it, and this is damage limitation. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to be more time consuming, therefore more expensive yet again. And there's the potential for delays as well, in terms of people receiving goods in the way that they would have done. For the government and for businesses, is this damage limitation? Because we've got no choice about all of this. We had no choice in the first place in Brexit. We have very little choice as to whether there's going to be a deal or no deal. And the outcome of all of this is not going to be good for Jersey, is it?
Well, Murray, good morning, and good morning to everyone joining us. We're very grateful for you taking time to ask your questions, and to my two colleagues who've joined us this morning on the panel. I wouldn't describe it like that, Murray. It's a change in our relationship with the European Union. And what we unfortunately can't yet say is whether those issues of tariffs will be dealt with through some form of agreement. It's not surprising that that is a choppy negotiation. Any negotiation of this nature is not going to be straightforward. But there is a school of thought which is that their deal might be so thin that the only thing it does is actually for both sides to agree that there are not going to be any tariffs imposed. But we can't give businesses any certainty, and that's why for the last couple of years we've all been thinking about and trying to prepare for a no-deal Brexit. So it's going to change. It's going to be challenging in the short term. There is no doubt, and we've been clear about this from the start, that it will be more bureaucratic. So your point about bureaucracy costing business money is a fair one. But as far as we are concerned in government, we've been doing, I think, all that we can, and we'll continue to do, as we've just heard Paul say, everything we can to support businesses, either directly from government or by Jersey Business, to support businesses through that bureaucracy. So with any challenge comes an opportunity. And that does mean there is an opportunity for businesses to think about how they are using technology and how they are changing their processes to make them more efficient through the use of technology. So there is that opportunity. Short-term costs, of course, but longer-term gains and efficiencies. So really, the biggest issue, I think, for increased costs is around tariffs. And I can't give businesses or islanders any certainty yet. That, of course, we have to be absolutely clear, comes on top of what is a recessionary period driven by COVID-19. Our independent economists already think that the effect of that recession is going to be a 5% increase in the entire cost base. So it's going to be challenging. We're absolutely clear about that. But government stands ready to help and support in any way that it can.
Okay, I'm going to pick up just very quickly on the support and the cost aspect of that, and two questions for that. First of all, will the extra costs be factored in by the government in terms of any support that it's giving? And I don't want to really bring COVID into this, but if we're in this recession and we're in this pandemic and we've got Brexit costs coming on top, presumably when the government is sitting down and working out its business plan, it's taking into account Brexit and extra costs for business and looking at extra help for business. And the second part of that is about that bureaucracy and that extra short-term costs that you rightly say businesses are going to have. Is there any a business is going to be cut a break somewhere in terms of costs because we know there's going to be these extra costs? So is there any financial support for businesses in anything that you were talking about here?
Well, let's remind ourselves, Murray, the general rate of corporate tax is 0. That puts Jersey businesses in pole position when it comes to businesses elsewhere across the globe, but also in comparison with UK businesses who are facing these same challenges. So that gives them competitive advantage. But right now, as we sit here, government is supporting businesses to support jobs by many tens of millions of pounds in a way that we have never, we wouldn't have dreamed possible, imaginable or necessary until we face this global pandemic. So we are already doing that. There are other pieces of work which are more sector specific, which are in the final stages of being approved by my ministerial colleagues, and we stand ready to support in that respect. These are largely, of course, COVID-related support interventions. But like elsewhere, we don't know what winter holds. We've got a programme to really enable us to keep businesses open, to keep schools open, but that's going to rely on all of us as individuals taking other measures and mitigations, as the health people would call them. Some of those are quite challenging, some of the things that we're not used to, like masks, like really making sure that we are properly socially distanced. So our interventions are twofold. We are really wanting to keep the economy open. We're absolutely committed to that, because I am one of those people that really thinks the vast majority have not yet realised the potential devastating effects upon jobs and upon businesses, and therefore upon people's well-being, of the effect of the previous lockdown and the ongoing effect of COVID. So we've got that, which I think is our primary aim. We've then got the financial interventions, and then we've got the support interventions, as I've said, that government departments are providing and Jersey business is providing, and of course the actual negotiation itself, where we continue to say to the UK government, as far as we are concerned, of course we would like our own deal, as we've described throughout these 2 days, but really for us a deal is the best outcome, and we push for that deal to include no tariffs.
Okay, and thank you for that answer. I appreciate it, and we will go back to the technical details very shortly. I just want to pick up on just a couple of things there. One, some of those targeted specific sectors, Senator Gortz, have been waiting not weeks now, but months for this, and a day is a long time in a business that can't pay any of its bills. And the latest that Chamber has heard is that we're still 3 weeks away from any form of announcement to that targeted. And I know that there are specific sectors. Also, co-funding is tapering off to 20% by March at just the time that we're going through a very long, dark winter. So is there any chance that co-funding will be reviewed at any point?
Murray, you know in government that to get things done, it needs people with drive, with commitment, and with determination. And you know the inside of government. You know that some of those ministers who've been involved in getting the support packages over the line to this point are conflicted. And rightly are not involving themselves in bringing forward these measures. Unfortunately, without wishing to blow their trumpets, without that drive and commitment, things are taking far too long. So I understand entirely that businesses right now are thinking about their winter provision. They're thinking about how they're going to survive, how they're going to cut costs, which jobs, unfortunately, that they're not going to be able to maintain. So we understand that. I understand that. But it's not that straightforward for all of the reasons that I've just said. So that's the additional support packages. When it comes to the co-funded payroll scheme, and we only need to look across the water and see that the United Kingdom Chancellor has had to change his business support scheme 3 times in the course of a month. And I think that says something about the strength of the scheme that we've got in place that has been able to be maintained in its current form. But be in no doubt, Senator Farnham and myself and the Treasury Minister are absolutely committed that if we do see things worsening, but firstly we're committed to dealing with the COVID pandemic and keeping it contained and limited. But right alongside that commitment for us is keeping the economy open. Because at the end of the day, even if government were to step in and cover every cost of business, it would still, by closing those businesses down, have a devastating effect upon them in the medium and longer term. And so keeping them open, allowing them to innovate, allowing them to right size, as it were, as difficult as that is by far the best option for islanders, for their jobs and for their well-being. But if it is needed to change as we come out of into next year and as we come into spring, be in no doubt we are absolutely ready to change it.
Okay. All right. Interesting that the UK changes 3 times in a month, and we're looking at next spring. But we'll come back to that, and we'll get off the political hobby horse for just a second.
No, Murray, you can't get away. You cannot get away with that. They changed it.
So why don't we change it now?
They've changed it 3 times in the course of a month because the initial schemes that they came up with stopped working. They opened, they closed. They've opened. They've closed. They've gone to a regional approach. Our initial provision is standing the test of time. What you are doing is asking me to say what changes we're going to make in spring of next year, when the only thing that's been certain throughout this COVID-19 pandemic is a great deal of uncertainty. And we know not much more about COVID-19 than we knew when we started this pandemic. We are committed, as I've said, to keeping the economy open, to keeping islanders in work, and we will take the measures that are required to ensure that. And as I say, if we get into spring of next year and we need to make amendments, we will make those amendments.
So what if we've got businesses right now that can't operate and they're considering selling their own homes and moving off island? And I heard that story only yesterday because they can't do anything. Next spring is too late.
Well, Mary, your job is to come to government, and you know this, and you do an excellent job of it, giving us the details, helping us to understand where the problems are that businesses are facing, and we respond to that.
We'll be doing that.
Thank you.
In the meantime, let's get back to those people who are bringing goods into the island and the things that they need to know. Paul, I'm going to come back to you on this. We've talked about where the guideline procedures are. Specifically, and in the motor trade, and there are people from the motor trade watching this and joining this webinar, and we're very grateful they're on. They've sent us some questions in. There was a question from Kenny and also from Miles and others. As the trade importing parts and cars from the UK on a daily basis, consigned from our UK-based manufacturers and franchises, is there any implication at the point of import? Now, that's a pretty technical question, but if you're a motor trade franchise and you're bringing in from the UK, but those goods have come in from the EU, what's the implications here? Because this is quite a worrying trend for an industry that's bringing goods in day after day, Paul.
I think it does reinforce something that we were saying earlier. If the goods are cleared into the UK and they are then being moved down to Jersey in the example that you've just given, then there'll be no formalities at the border. Everything will move between the UK and Jersey as it currently does, and that's being agreed under the UK CD's customs agreement. So there is absolutely no friction in relation to trade moving between the UK and Jersey, so long as those goods are in free circulation in the UK. So the question again, I think, turns to whether or not the goods have originated in Europe, whether they've been cleared into the UK, and whether they've attracted a tariff at that point. So the impact, I think, for in relation to the questions that have been asked, is whether or not that tariff is then applied, or those costs are applied by the UK supplier to the price of the good that they're then selling to the individuals in Jersey. And of course, they'll also have to wrap into that any costs that they've had to take on in relation to the customs clearance of those goods. So it is quite a technical question. If the goods are originating in the UK, entirely originating in the UK, nothing will change. If the goods are originating in Europe, then yes, they could see a cost implication to the final good that they buy from the UK supplier, but at the border between here and the UK, there will be no difference.
Okay, so the cost implications coming in from the EU into the UK, and the franchise will be dealing with that, but that cost is inevitably going to be passed on. Thank you for that. And if there are any further questions from the motor trade, we'd be really happy to take them. I've got another question here, which is about customs commodity codes. Luke, Paul, these are for you. And they came in from Ruth. Where do we get all of the information on commodity codes? And a second question, is CISA, the customs program, set up to accept the input of commodity codes? So a couple of more technical questions there for you. And if you could answer those, we'd be grateful.
Yes, of course. Fairly straightforward, fortunately, on this occasion. So the commodity codes are, we're using the UK global tariff. That will be the external global tariff that we're using for all goods that are coming into or being exported from the customs union, which is the UK CD's customs territory. What you'd need to do, and there are links to the UK global tariff in the border operating model, and obviously you can find them online as well. You need to then classify the good that you're intending to trade. You then put the code into the UK global tariff, and it will provide you with the measures that are attached to that particular commodity, whether it's a tariff rate is attached or whether there's a requirement for a license or some other customs measure. In terms of CISA, yes, CISA's been updated. It's always been able to cope with commodity codes. It's been updated now to cope with all of the other customs measures and all of the other customs procedures that are required under Brexit. That work was actually done for the April 18 or 19 departure, the original Brexit date. So that's been embedded and in place and is ready to be used. So we're confident as we can be that the systems are ready. I think it just needs business now to look at their commodities, to do some research and to work out whether those goods are likely to attract tariffs. Again, with the caveat that we just don't know the outcome of the EU UK negotiations. So there is still that uncertainty.
Okay, staying on CESA, and whilst we're on this subject, on the CESA platform, is it possible to save a template of frequently imported goods?
Yes, we anticipated the need for that, particularly if you are a trader who maybe brings up multi-consignments. We see that coming from Portugal or Poland. There may be 1,000 lines in one consignment. So we've developed a template that allows you to reuse the template, but only use the lines that you necessarily want to bring in at that particular point. That's been developed. That will be ready for use on the 1st of January. In fact, it's ready for use now, but of course we've got no trade from the EU that falls into the controls that would require that functionality.
Okay. Time at the moment is 9:30. Good morning to you. You're welcome along. If you have joined us and you've joined us later than the start of this, you can ask questions via Slido. We've got a whole array of questions up there, and you can do that. Just log on to Slido, and then you can go from Slido using hashtag Beyond Brexit as the passcode, and then you can put your questions in. It's quite simple. We'll see it up on the screen right at this minute. So you can do so as they are. The question here, we've talked about the guidance for relating to customs procedures online, and we've talked about the CESA platform and saving there. I wanted to stay on that subject just for a moment and talk about tariffs, if I may. And another question that's come in that I've received here directly at Chamber. What extra tariffs or tax will be imposed on EU wines and spirits? You can see where their thinking is here and where their priorities are. Perhaps they're in the wines and spirits trade. One hopes so. So extra tariffs and taxes that will be imposed on EU wines and spirits. Does that come under the commodity codes and or the UK global tariffs? And we don't know those yet, do we?
That will come under the UK global tariff, correct. So again, what the importer will need to do is identify the exact product that they're importing. Until we know whether there's a deal or no deal, that's a difficult question to answer, because if there's a deal, then there'll be very few tariffs. If there's a no deal, then there'll be a lot of goods will attract a tariff. Particularly whether those sort of luxury items attract a tariff. There's no fast rule in terms of goods that attract a tariff. So some may, wine may not. We think tobacco probably will attract a tariff. But again, I think the importer needs to understand what goods they're importing, go onto the UK global tariff, and put in that commodity code to find out that information themselves. I mean, there are 250,000 lines within the tariff, so unfortunately I haven't got the mental capacity to remember exactly the tariff rate for everything, but that's the way that I think the obligation really is on the trader to do that piece of work themselves. We cannot do that on behalf of the trader. It has to be done by the trader.
I looked at red wines just out of personal interest, and there was about 7 or 8% tariff on that. That's just out of personal interest. And I can't believe you don't know 250,000 product codes. Will the approved trader status continue, where goods are still received into Jersey and delivered to a trader, sometimes prior to the import declaration being completed? Can you just explain the process of that for those that don't know? Because presumably, if every good had to be charged the minute it arrived, there'd be long queues. So is this a way of giving credit to approved traders? How does that work?
That is a really good question, and one that I think that was a good opportunity to talk this through. So the approved trader scheme at the moment really operates for GST. So again, any goods that are moving from the UK to Jersey without originating in the EU or without any third country complications, that approved trader status will not change, it will remain in place. What we are having to do is look at those traders that are importing from third country, and we are introducing a new approved trader status, approved third country importer, and that will require them to talk to us. We will need to set a criteria in terms of some rules as to how they apply. They have to be solvent, they have to have a good customs record. But the principle behind doing that is that they will then be able to apply for other customs procedures, the most notable being simplified declarations. And we would urge some of the larger importers to go down that route. This means that they can do a pre-arrival declaration, which we are really pushing people to consider doing. Pre-arrival declaration will require a minimum data set, but because we know who the trader is, those goods will be allowed through and they will be delivered. And then there are 30 days to pay the GST, or more importantly in this situation, if it's from third country, any tariffs. So that mechanism is in place. It works, but it's going to be slightly different because of the introduction of tariffs and the real need for pre-arrival information, pre-declarations. If you do not submit those pre-declarations, then the goods will be detained until that's done, and that is a huge change, and that is something that traders really do need to think about. It will disrupt them getting those goods. That won't happen on day one. We're not going to be imposing the equivalent of martial law on day one in terms of the movement of goods, but it is something they're going to have to get used to very quickly.
The delay of goods actually comes into another question that's been asked. How much delay can we expect on goods arriving in the island, with an assumption that food and perishables will take priority? Luke, is this a question for you? I mean, what are we anticipating for on delays, and where's the priority?
I've had some involvement with a team that's working across government for looking at the effects of supply chains to the island in a potential no-deal situation. This is something that the team have been looking at since the potential advent of a no-deal from almost 2 years ago to get the island prepared for this. This received some media attention when we were looking at the potential no-deal at the end of last year, but I can say that an awful lot of work has been done across the board and prioritising the areas that you would expect, as we have previously, medicine and food being at the top of that list, and fuel also. So this is something that's been very carefully looked at. One of the bonuses for the island, and clearly that's the reason that we have the relationship that we do with the UK and have the customs agreement with the UK, is that the vast majority of the items that we have come in from the UK anyway. So those supply chains are solid, and they'll remain that way. And we have contingency plans in place should there be delays from anything coming from the UK through down to the island in terms of being able to get freight movements onto the ferries that service the islands.
Is there a danger that we'll end up with lots of goods in Jersey waiting to be cleared from customs? And have we got the facilities to have that storage there?
Probably best I pass you on to Paul for that. It's almost the same answer to the questions before, though, in that it's really to do with the communication between those traders and us. And I know Paul's team's been working incredibly hard with literally one-to-one engagement with those traders that we have already recognised are going to be affected, to try to get them to get the appropriate approved trader positions in place that he's just spoken about, to reduce that effect from day one. But Paul probably want to add to that.
Yes, in theory there could be an issue. We're working extremely hard to avoid that. The key here is that if people and traders do take on board the need to do these pre-declarations, and they are approved as a third country importer, then no, there won't be any delays, because things will be moving fairly smoothly. It's only those individuals who choose not to do that their goods will be detained. Now, the actual areas that are used to detain those goods at present, customs don't have a customs warehouse for that purpose. So it will be for the carrying companies who currently do this for us, in relation to GST. They will hold those goods until they are cleared for release from us. But again, I've got to emphasise that, perishable goods, foodstuffs, they will not be delayed, whatever the formalities may demand. They will be processed, and they will not be delayed. There could be delays for some of the more mundane type goods that people maybe order off the internet, for example. We may take a slightly harsher view on those, albeit there will be a few months for this to bed in, for people to get used to. So yes, Murray, to answer your question, there is potential for more goods to be detained. That burden will be carried by the carrying companies initially, but we are really working hard to reduce that possibility, and to ensure that we return to a state which is similar to what we have now. It's just a question of getting those declarations in early.
Senator Gorse, let's widen this out slightly in terms of delays. And I remember very well talking Brexit 3 years ago, when we were talking of the resilience of the southeast of England and getting goods to Portsmouth, which is our gateway into Jersey. There's been a great deal of work done with the likes of the Hampshire Resilience Forum and with the Portsmouth County Council in terms of getting goods in there. Are you satisfied that we're not going to get delays and as we talked about it, the trailer lengths running onto the motorway, so that goods are going to get down into Jersey in a timely fashion?
Thank you, Murray, and I'll answer that question carefully. I'm satisfied that we and all of those organisations and companies and bodies are as prepared as we can be. What we don't know, of course, is if there is any disruption, it will largely be because of knock-on effects of disruption elsewhere. I think that Portsmouth International Port, I think the Hampshire Local Resilience Authority, I think Condor and the logistics companies are well prepared. The unknown, as I say, is whether there'll be knock-on effect from other ports if there are disruption across the other elements of the channel. But we are as prepared, I think, as we can be at this point.
Okay, thank you. You've been listening to some of the technical questions and the concerns of businesses, not just on this forum today, but over the last 6 months to a year, whilst we have been distracted with other crucial things too. Businesses are going to need some help and some training to deal with a new way of doing things, as you put it earlier on. Now, will the Jersey government consider running some basic courses to help businesses? There will be people that have never done this before, and I just wonder if there is some coordination between the two. Obviously, we're doing things such as Beyond Brexit today and yesterday, and all of these will help. But specific courses to deal with customs declaration, they're a complicated beast, and the likes of which we've not seen before. So I just wonder if there is a role for government here to be able to deliver some sort of training to businesses that will help them.
Mary, we stand ready if that is something that your members and other businesses are saying would be helpful. If I was being cheeky, I could say that that's a slight step back from the tailor-made one-to-one help that Paul and Luke's colleagues are providing, together with what Jersey Business is providing. But if there is value in running small, bespoke, tailored courses, we could certainly work with Jersey Business, as we've been doing throughout the course of this year in a way that we've never done before, to support your members in such matters, if that's of value.
It's certainly, if we look at the United Kingdom is paying for training for businesses when it comes to customs declarations, and to train people up to to that level, and it's quite an involved course. Even customs officers are on online courses to learn this as well. So I just wonder if that is a gap that can be filled for the benefit of the island by the government.
Murray, we don't, as you well know, just follow what the UK does. I believe that here in Jersey we've got a much more business-focused government. We are much closer to each other. We are much more supportive of each other. And as I say, if your members and if you as Chamber think there would be value in running those small discrete courses on particular issues, then we can speak to Jersey business together with government colleagues and do that if that would be helpful, but only if it would be helpful.
Thank you very, very much indeed for that, Senator. Always good to know that we've got those options there. Chris asked a question which goes back to tariffs. Can you advise if Jersey will change any of the tariffs that have been established by the United Kingdom? So can we change any tariffs, and will any tariffs be changed that have been established by the UK? Who wants to answer this one? Because what a big question, really.
No, is it?
Yeah, I know.
We all know the answers, just none of us want to give it.
I think Minister, that's the one.
Okay. Yeah, the answer is no, of course.
We just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that, I'm assuming. Once they're set, is this because we're bound to the CTA, and this is the reason why we must follow the same protocols as the UK?
We're bound, obviously, into the CTA and the new customs arrangement. So once we leave the transition period, there will be a joint committee formed of United Kingdom and the Crown dependencies. But we shouldn't overestimate our influence on that committee. We have already, in some cases, been making arguments about differing forms of tariff, which we think would benefit certain specific sectors of our economy without any detrimental effect to the UK economy. So we'll continue to do that, and there is a forum to be able to do it. But if it wouldn't be a differential, it wouldn't be one rate for the UK and one rate for us. It would be coming and having an agreement around a universal rate or a single rate within that customs arrangement.
Okay, I can't ignore the fact that one of our members is the Jersey Fishermen's Association, Senator Dawes, and they have said that we had the opportunity to talk to you. They'd be really interested. And as you know, ongoing talks about goods that land in our island from our fishing fleets are as important as any other. Where are we with that right now? Because I couldn't miss this opportunity to ask you this question.
No, and hopefully we've got a session dealing this afternoon directly with the fishing matters. I, together with the Environment Minister, had a meeting yesterday with representatives of the aquaculture sector. We've met with members of the JFA previously. Of course, not in a not dissimilar way to the UK, fishing is a challenging, tricky issue, which has been left to the end of the negotiations and is one of those areas where agreement has not yet been made or reached. I think with appropriate political will on both sides of that negotiation table, it is possible to get a deal, but both will have to compromise. Of course, we are asking for a specific arrangement for Jersey and the EU, as are our colleagues in Guernsey. There's been quite a bit of publicity around whether the government's approach is right. I continue to believe it is right, but those negotiations are ongoing.
Okay, we won't get bogged down in fishing because I know there's another session on that. Just looking at the screen and some of the questions that are coming in here. Before we go back to the motor trade, which I will do in a moment, a question from Ian. When buying items online, what happens if I buy something from a UK online supplier, but the item, unknown to me, is dispatched directly from Italy, for instance. So you're buying something from a UK supplier, but it gets sent from a European country. Paul, this is going to be a complication, isn't it? I suppose it depends how it lands in Jersey.
Exactly right, Murray. Yes. So if the item that's bought online, if it's bought through a UK site, but you don't necessarily know that it's going to be fulfilled by the UK site, and it's actually sent by a company in Europe, it all then depends on how that item arrives here in Jersey. Either way, if it's originating in the UK and attracts a tariff, when it does arrive here, then it will be liable to a customs declaration, and the importer is going to have to complete that declaration. It's just a question of how it arrives, whether it arrives directly from France via the southern route, or whether it arrives by mail, by courier, by various sort of freight movements that will transit through the UK. The question for the buyer is that if they don't know, then that is an issue. But I strongly believe that the larger online traders will make buyers aware of the fact that these goods are originating elsewhere, and that additional taxes could be applicable. The other possibility is that Amazon UK just won't allow you to buy, or won't have access to the EU marketplace, and therefore you won't be able to buy goods that originate in Europe through the UK Amazon site.
Murray, can I add to that?
Yeah, go on, Luke.
Murray, can I add to that?
Yes, please do. Please do. Sorry, Luke, I didn't quite hear you there. Yes, please.
That's all right. It's just to bear in mind, in the same way as this scenario with the immigration side of this is just, in effect, a reduction in the area of countries that have trade agreements, if you like, with us, with the current membership of the EU, or the extended transition period of the EU at the moment. So today, if you imagine you're buying goods online at the moment, you don't know if they're coming from the EU or outside the EU. And the majority of the larger online companies have managed this quite well. And as the importer, you generally don't know where the items have come from. Many, as we know, come from China anyway, and are probably liable to tariff rates to an extent anyway. And so it's something that you don't notice as the importer. And as Paul says, it's a good likelihood that the larger organisations will have these already in hand and be prepared for the changes that are going to come through. And it's just a change in the countries that fall within a particular bracket.
Mm.
Can I take this other opportunity while I'm talking to just, it's very a clarification of the technical side of the taxes that are collected here. And you were asking about the wine before and the effects as to whether our tariffs can change differently to that of the UK. It's just bearing in mind, which the majority of the people online today will probably be already aware of, but just to be clear, the taxes that are collected by customs and immigration not only affect the customs tariffs, but the excise duty on fuel, wine and tobacco and spirits, as well as the VED. And obviously we have our own control over the rates of the excise duty on alcohol, tobacco and fuel and VED. It's the customs tariff, which is the separation that we're bound to the UK on. It's just sort of the clarity there, so that where there are additional taxes on the red wine you're talking about, it's not a single tax.
Indeed. Thanks for the clarification on that. And let's move to some of the other areas that are questions that have been coming in on. There was a question that came in that said, it's back to the motor trade again, Paul, and I guess I'm going to come back to you on this one to start with. Daily, the motor trade has deliveries coming in from the UK. The current paperwork is received by customs from the manufacturer via the UK franchise arm. So in terms of that, as an exporter of goods produced in Jersey, I wish to take advantage of a free trade agreement. So I think I'm reading the right one here. Because it's split. I beg your pardon. Let me read both parts of this. Motor trade deliveries from the UK. Currently, the paperwork is received by customs from manufacturers via the UK franchise arm. Do we have to complete a declaration form ourselves for the very vehicle part or vehicle coming into Jersey each year, or will the paperwork be as it is now? I hope that made some sort of sense to you there, Paul.
Yes, I think again, it reiterates a point made earlier. If the UK headquarters, for want of a better word, I think all automotive parts will go to UK hubs for distribution elsewhere, and they will be cleared into the UK. That's my understanding. That in the vast majority of cases, all of those goods would be cleared into the UK. And then they're in free circulation, if you like, within the UK CD's bubble. They can move anywhere within that area freely. When they do come down to Jersey, they will attract the same attention as they do now, which is very little. If they're an approved trader, then they will be delivered straight to the trader. If they're not an approved trader, then there may be a GST issue, but I suspect the individual asking this question would be an approved trader. Or have access to the approved trader scheme. So I think I just need to reiterate that in that scenario, I don't believe anything will change significantly. There should be no delays. There just may be additional costs to consider if the good did originate from the EU and it's been subject to a tariff or some other sort of administrative process, which may be passed on to the importer here. But by and large, goods moving from the UK to Jersey, what happens now will continue.
Okay, question from David, and I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer this one, but we'll give it a go because it's a question that's been asked. If all lorries arrived in Dover for one day were parked nose to tail, the queue would be 110 miles long. What does gridlock look like in St Helier?
I think I can't comment on what the traffic will be like in the UK, but if we are receiving the normal sort of freight movements from France, then there just will be no gridlock in Jersey. That's the easy answer to that question. So goods moving on the southern route, there will be no gridlock. We've got no control over what happens in the UK, but the UK are preparing for the worst. That's really as much as I can say on that question. I think it's a tricky one.
I'm not sure if it was a follow-on question. I'm going to go to Senator Gorson on this because...
Mary, sorry, go and ask me then, because I think it was more about is the effects of checks coming into St Helier from the UK going to cause gridlock. But for all of the reasons that we've said about the customs arrangement and all of those things and the flexibility that Paul has spoken about with fresh produce and all of that, we really don't envisage, and there should be no reason why we have that problem here in St Helier, and we will work through it in slower time if we foresee when they're less flexible. I'm not sure you used a term. When they're less flexible, we will continue to work with logistics companies to make sure that doesn't happen, other than, of course, the gridlock that we all experience every morning when we drive our children into school.
No, we don't. We send them all on the bus, don't we, Santa Claus? And on the bicycle. So let's broaden this out. And Senator, I like to expand on things and have these discussions with you from time to time. You've mentioned before now, and I've mentioned before now, the fact that Europe is quite close to us. We can see it from our east coast, and yet most of our goods come in from the north. Now, that may suit how we are, and we're in a common travel area, but is there potential for more goods to come in from the southern route? And is that something that the government is looking at?
Well, Murray, let's be honest, you probably know more about that from your time in economic development than I do.
It's not a leading question.
It's been considered and thought about. You've got the labelling issue, which I think is probably very easily solvable, because we still have goods labelled in different languages that are sold in certain shops on the island. I think it's a more fundamental issue about the, for example, supermarkets who are all connected into northbound supply chains, and until we have perhaps a more European name or a French name supermarket, I think we're going to see that continued great connection to the north. I think it would be a French supermarket that would really kick off the southern supply route in the way that you're indicating.
I just wondered if government are exploring that in terms of making sure that we have a food security, and that's an issue I wanted to come on to. In terms of goods and supplies coming into our island, food security is an area that we've long been concerned about, and has almost been the silent item on every agenda. So, food security, an area that we're comfortable with Brexit.
Well, don't take my word for it. You'll be aware that when we were preparing for previously for No Deal, the end of last year, there was some toing and froing in the local media about whether we were prepared or not. But I understand from those supermarkets that the learning that they've gathered or garnered during COVID-19 means that they are much more confident about their supplies and about food security now, and preparing for no further negotiated outcome than they were previously. So don't take my word for it, take their word for it.
All right, I will do just that. Thank you very much indeed for that question. Plenty more questions coming in. It's 10 o'clock. We've got about half an hour left. And if you've got a question, now is the time to bring it in. I'm looking at a question from Ian at the moment, which has just come in. And we're going to try and get this out to you. It's about tariffs and taxes. Where there are multiple taxes on an item, in what order are they applied? For example, the cost is £100 and there's a £10 tariff, which makes it £110. And then there's 20% duty, which makes it £132. Then there's GST at 5%, which makes it £138.60. So more duty and GST collected just because of the additional tariffs. Or is the GST and the duty on the original price? I think that might be the question there. Technical question. But with multiple tariffs and taxes, are they all on the original price, or they roll from one to another?
If again, if the goods are coming from the UK, then it's simply on the value of the goods, and if there's any excise attached to that for cigarettes or tobacco, then the GST will be based on the value of the goods plus the excise charge, and then you calculate the GST. If the goods are going to attract a tariff, then the formula is pretty much as the individual points out. So the customs value is what's important. You need to establish the customs value of the good. The customs value is the price paid for the good. It will also include the cost insurance freight of getting the good to the island. Then the tariff rate is worked out on that customs value. So if that was a 10% and the goods were worth £100, then clearly it would be a £10 tariff rate. So you're looking there at the GST then being calculated in relation to the total value, including the customs tariff rate. It's the GST is the last tax that's applied effectively.
So if the GST is the last tax that applies, Senator Gorst, there's going to be an uplift in GST take, isn't there?
Well, let's wait and see. First of all, we don't know if there's going to be tariffs, because we don't know yet whether there's going to be a deal or not. If there isn't a deal, if there are tariffs and GST is applied, we obviously don't know whether there will be a straightforward uplift in GST, everything being equal, you would suspect there might be. But we've got to remember that we are entering or in a recession arising out of COVID-19. And so our forecasts are that the revenue take across the economy is going to be reducing.
But it'll be more GST than it would have been because it'll be a GST on a larger price.
That's making the assumption that people are still spending to the same level that they were before, and their spend is not affected by the recessionary impact.
A lot of assumptions. We'll wait and see, as you say. Comment from Daphne to you, Senator. Training courses on customs declarations would be great from the government. Thank you, Senator Gorse. Also, excellent information from the panel. So you're getting some thanks here, Senator, for the possibility of some training courses. So perhaps that's something we can work on and develop, and we'll key in with you from Chamber on the requests that come in for that one. So good news there.
Murray, no, I know you were chancing your arm, but seriously, if it is desired and necessary, then that's something that we can go away and we'll work with Jersey Business together with colleagues who I know are doing a first-class job at speaking individually to businesses and individuals in those businesses to support them. If courses are necessary, as you're saying they now are, and Daphne is reiterating, then we'll go away and do something about that.
Chancing my arm? Never. Lots of other questions that have been coming in via email to me directly as well. So if you have questions, and we're in the last 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes possibly, that we can extend this to, then please do get your questions in now. Slido is the best way of getting it up on the screen. You can see it up on your screen right now. I think we've asked most of the questions that are up there at the moment. David saying, can we finish by, I'm going to do it now rather than when we finish because it's in there. Can we thank customers for the support they've given Jersey businesses to date? I think they've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. That is good news all round. And it's good that people are feeling happy about that. But if you've got a question and you're watching this and you're thinking, I wish they'd ask about this particular thing because it matters to me, then now is the time to do that. Question here, what is a customs declaration? Who should submit them, and who is ultimately responsible, and how are they to be submitted? That's a very general, broad question about customs declarations. But can I come back to you, Paul, on that one, please? Because customs declarations are at the real nub of what we've been talking about today, and for a lot of people, this is going to be an added burden and a work load that they haven't done before.
Yeah, there is a sea change in the way that people are going to have to declare their goods for goods arriving from Europe. A customs declaration, it requires a certain data set. The most important data set are the value of the goods, which I've explained before. It needs to have the country of origin. It needs to include any freight, any insurance costs that have been incurred getting the good to the island. Most importantly, it needs the commodity code so that any duties can be calculated and any other customs measures can be applied, because we will reconcile that declaration to against the UK global tariff, and then that explains exactly what the outcome of submitting that declaration is. Who should submit? Well, the obligation, the legal obligation is on the importer to submit a customs declaration. So it's the importer that needs to get that information correct. They need to know what their commodity codes are. This is something that customs can't do for the importer. It has to be the importer, and this is why traders here do need to do this research. The importer may choose to employ a customs agent. So these are businesses that provide that service. But ultimately, the importer is still liable for the declaration. But as a customs agent, they are more experienced in terms of submitting declarations and processing the paperwork. Again, that's going to be a business choice, a business decision on what they decide to do. And certainly, I think for the businesses that only import one type or two types of good, they may be able to cope with this within their own business. It's only when you start to see multiple consignments of different types of good, that the customs declaration becomes even more complicated.
Let's talk about agents and customs agents. Do we know that if these customs agents exist, and is there a list of them? There will be businesses there saying, right, I need a customs agent because there's going to be more than 2 goods that I'm bringing in. I don't want to do it myself. Have we got an approved list of these that we can give to businesses?
We are working on that at the moment. This has been a gap that has been identified. We know of 4 to 5 companies that are looking to provide that service. We are now talking to them to establish whether or not they're going to go ahead and provide that service. And we are hoping to get some sort of list up onto gov.je within the next couple of weeks, which allows people then to pick and choose the customs agent that they want to use. We can't recommend customs agents as an individual business. We can't say we think you should go to this customs agent. Again, that's a business decision that needs to be taken by the individual businesses. All we can do is provide a list of the people that provide those services, and that will be happening in the next couple of weeks.
All right, we'll keep businesses and members informed on that as and when. Somebody writing in here, I'm an exporter of goods produced in Jersey, and I wish to take advantage of free trade agreements. What are the rules of origin?
Right, so rules of origin is a very complicated subject, so I'll try and sort of be brief. It all depends on whether or not the UK, and by default the Ireland, has a free trade agreement with a particular country. But essentially it means that if that were to be the case, so if Jersey was to have a free trade agreement with the EU, any goods that originate in Jersey that are then exported to the European Union, under the terms of the free trade agreement, the good, when it arrives in the European Union, will be subject to either a preferential rate or a 0 rate. And the producer in Jersey just needs to make a declaration to say that, yes, these goods were wholly obtained in Jersey, on the island. They've been manufactured from Jersey components, or grown, caught, harvested, whatever the description of the good is. And then that will allow the exporter to benefit from rules of origin. That's the whole point. It does get more complicated if you are a manufacturer and you're making a good using components that are drawn from different countries. And then there are all sorts of rules which I probably better not go into today. But I think the message to the agricultural, the dairy and the fisheries is that if there is a deal with the EU, they should be able to benefit from rules of origin, because there's a rules of origin chapter in that particular free trade agreement.
Because it's quite detailed there, presumably a call to your offices would help them take them through those niche details of whatever they're producing.
Indeed, and we've already engaged with some producers, and we have meetings, in fact, next week with others. So it is something that we are encouraging, producers to come and talk to us about.
Okay. Technical question about pallets. Freight is charged per pallet. If the pallet has multiple items, can the freight be added as charged, or must it be divided out between the different items? So freight charged per pallet. If the pallet has multiple items, can the freight be added as charged, or must it be divided out between different items?
Depending on who the final recipient is. But clearly, if there are multiple recipients of goods on the same pallet, then yes, you're going to have to divide the freight costs out amongst those recipients.
And that very often happens, doesn't it? Where various goods are going to different importers, and they're all fitted onto one pallet because it's obviously more cost effective to transport by a pallet.
Correct, but I think for individuals, normally the freight costs are included in the price of the good that you buy. So, those costs are already included. for personal purchases.
Right. Questions just coming in, and thanks very much indeed for these. And do keep them coming in. We're down to the last 15 minutes, and we'll keep them get them in as quickly as we possibly can for you. We've dealt with freight charges. I'll deal with ferry services in just a moment. So how do we get commodity codes of goods if suppliers don't have it? Where can we find this information? I think we covered this a bit earlier, but let's go over commodity codes once again.
Okay, so I think what will happen if your goods are originating in the EU, there's a very good possibility that your supplier in the EU will be providing the commodity codes. So that's one option. All the importer will need to do is to make sure that commodity code is correct. The other option is to use the UK global tariff, to do a search on the UK global tariff to find the commodity code for your good. And that's probably the safest way to do this. If you find that difficult because the UK global tariff isn't the easiest online tool to use, sometimes it is as simple as typing something into Google and saying, I want to bring in textiles from India. And it will give you the first 6 digits of the global tariff, because the global tariff is, as it says, it's global. Those first 6 digits are the same. And then you can then put those digits into the global tariff. If it comes back with a description of the goods that you want to import, then you know you're on the right lines. So there are a number of tools, a number of mechanisms that you can employ to try and identify your goods.
Okay. But there's a list of them and you can go and look them up.
Essentially, yes. What you have to do is identify them. You need to understand what it is you're importing. That's the first thing. And that means getting that commodity code and making sure it's the correct commodity code.
I think our question about freight has caused another one. If freight is an additional charge to the import and the pallet is for one individual, how should the charges be accounted for?
That will depend on how that one individual submits the declaration, because when you submit a customs declaration, there is provision within that declaration to include the freight charges. So the value of the good is one thing, that's usually recorded on the invoice, but the freight charges are recorded in another data file, in another data field, and if so long as that can be broken down and is a tangible figure, it just goes on to the customs declaration.
Okay, one that I'm going to move to Santa Gorst on, no surprises with this. With Brexit in mind, can we get a more reliable ferry service is the question. Difficult question to answer, I dare say, and some might argue that we have as good a ferry service as we can. And in defence, Condor ferries are not sitting on this panel, so it's difficult for them to defend themselves. And I'm sure that whether there's any tongue-in-cheek in that question or not, or whether what they want to get for an answer. But Senator Gorst, in terms of ferry services, we will be affected by the weather. We have got that winter period coming up now when we will be affected. We also have, obviously, as you say, a downturn in the economy, a pandemic and Brexit all at once. Could be a perfect storm, couldn't it?
We're very good at knocking those that serve our community. And from time to time, it seems that there's public railing against Condor, or, let's be honest, against any particular service provider. But I think if we step back and consider the broad scope of services that Condor offer, I think that they've served us well. And they've certainly served us well during COVID, and they serve us well as much as they possibly can through bad weather, particularly when it comes to supplies and freight. And I think that we should perhaps stop being critical of them all the time. They are running a business under difficult circumstances. It's always easy for us to criticise one another, but I think that actually they're doing a good job when it comes to freight services. Having said that, of course, I think with hindsight, it is right that they ask themselves whether the passenger vessel that they've got on the northern route is the right passenger vessel. And right now, government is in talks with Condor and with the shareholders to see how, again, moving forward, we can have additional investment into our ferry routes, that we can make sure we've got the right vessels providing the right service. But that will require trade-offs of extensions of service level agreements and certainty of income and all of those sorts of things. We're an island community. We rely on ferry services just like we rely on air services. They don't owe us a living. We have to go out and make our case. We're grateful to them when they do it well, and where things are not going quite as well as we might like, we engage with them, we work with them to put in place improved services. So my view is that freight services, largely they're doing a good job. Passenger services, that northern bound route can be improved, but it is going to require capital investment as those vessels in some instances come to the end of their life. But let's engage with them, let's work with them rather than just being critical, so that we can together improve that service.
All right, staying with you, Senator, and this is a really good point. If tariffs are applied, if tariffs are applied to the cost of food, if the cost of food will increase, isn't it time to remove GST from food items? The vulnerable and the low earners are going to suffer most from tariffs and GST going on food.
I'm not personally convinced by that argument, and I'm not sure that my colleagues would be either, for all of the reasons that we rehearsed when we initially introduced GST. That it's low, that it's broad, and that it's simple. We've had a lot of very good technical questions this morning about the implications of Brexit and tariffs and charges. Let's just be absolutely clear. If we introduced food exemptions from GST, like the UK does with VAT, this morning will have been a walk in the park around technical difficulties. So on the one hand, it appears attractive, but the reality is that any jurisdiction that has these sorts of exemptions, it gets very complicated very quickly. We all know about the difference between is the Jaffa cake a cake or is it a biscuit, and that's just the start of it. Having said all that, of course, I was, and it's on public record, I was in favour of a reduction or a removal of GST as a fiscal stimulus. I resoundingly lost that argument with my political colleagues for all of the reasons you can perhaps expect. So that's now history. We've brought forward the reductions in social security contributions. We've brought forward fiscal other measures around fiscal stimulus that I think will work equally as well, but I don't think you'll find any appetite amongst my ministerial colleagues for that suggestion.
Current ministerial colleagues. Thank you, Senator, for answering that. Is there a Brexit checklist? Is a question that, if you like, rolls into what's the most important thing traders need to consider. So, Paul and Luke, these are for you two, really, in terms of the Brexit checklist. We've talked a great deal in the last hour and 20 minutes about some of the technical issues here. To try and get our head around all of this, presumably we need to have a checklist in front of us and work our way through it.
Yes, I can pick this one up, Murray. So, gov.je, Brexit end of transition period business checklist is where we'd like to signpost people to. On that checklist, there's information in relation to immigration, customs, and a range of other areas that will be affected across the piece. So that, I think, is a really good opportunity to signpost people to that document. It is useful, lots of good links, and it covers an awful lot of other subjects other than just customs and immigration.
All right, and we'll make sure that people get that, and if members want that, we can pass that on. I think this is probably the beginning of lots of talks that we're going to be doing, Luke, in terms of Brexit and the impacts of Brexit. It doesn't just impact goods, as we've said. It does also impact on people and on the movement of people as well. So have we, it's a general question, but have we got enough time to get all of this dealt with? And I suspect that we're running up to January the 1st, 2021. Do we need to be worried about that date, or are we looking at a much softer introduction?
The message from this week across anyone who's involved in the movement of goods across our border, or people for employment or visits or tourism, is preparation. There are going to be changes that are going to affect the majority of people who have anything to do with the movement of goods or people, and to get as much information and be as prepared as possible for next year is probably the best message we can put across from today across both immigration and customs. There will be, if you like, a softer impact over the beginning of next year. There's a grace period for the applications for settled status. The withdrawal agreement allows for those people who are eligible for the settled status, those people that are here now, to not have to apply until the end of June next year. They will be here lawfully next year without that. Having said that, the impact of visitors and workers who are new to the island will be immediate, and they'll need permission straight away. But I can also give assurances that as it is going to be a new procedure, certainly for immigration, it's not going to be something that will be heavily enforced from day one. We understand this is going to be a new and potentially a difficult procedure for a lot of people to get their head around on both sides. And it's something that we'd certainly want to help people with wherever we can, and encourage people to do the appropriate paperwork and administrative procedure they're going to have to follow to fulfill both customs and or immigration requirements. So there will be help at hand there. I think the other point I need to make, though, and it's to do with the customs agents, that they don't exist in the same way here as they do in the majority of other jurisdictions across the world. And we have this almost parochial relationship with a lot of businesses, which is great in terms of the personal relationship I have with some of the people who are on the line today, with you particularly, that probably doesn't exist in the UK because we're so much smaller and have that flexibility. The difficulty being is that Paul and I sit here, and our responsibilities, as well as to ensure that we properly provide information to the public, is actually the compliance of the controls that are in place, which makes it difficult for us to, in fact impossible for us to actually provide a customs declaration on behalf of someone when we're actually supposed to be putting the compliance measures in place around it, equally for the immigration controls. So I think I'd like to ask people to bear that in mind when they're speaking to us, that as much as we need to help you, we need to do our jobs properly as well. But nevertheless, the information is out there. We will continue to provide as much information as possible, and do please keep coming to us. We'll do all we can to assist.
All right.
That wasn't
thank
me.
you, Luke, for that. I think I heard someone else coming in there, but I wasn't certain for a moment, and also there's a phone going off as well. So our apologies on that. Thank you for covering that off. Paul, is there anything that in the last minute that you want to add to that Luke has been saying? Because there is an awful lot for people to take in here, and I guess that businesses should really focus in the next 2 weeks on getting that preparation sorted.
Absolutely. I think Luke makes a good point. We can't be, gamekeeper and poacher. It is down to business to prepare. It is down for them to do a lot of this work in terms of identifying how they're going to be affected, if they're going to be affected. So my message is, talk to your suppliers, and we keep saying this, talk to your suppliers, understand your supply chain. Some people will not be affected, some people will be affected to a degree, and some people will be affected greatly. It just depends on how you get your goods to the island, and how you then mitigate the problems of getting them here with your logistics people. So that conversation has to be between the trader, their logistics people, and their suppliers. That's something that we can't help them with. Once they've got that detail, then we can provide them with guidance on various customs procedures, and we would be absolutely willing and open to do that. But it is that preparation that they need to do themselves, which is essential.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. I'd like to thank Luke Goddard and Paula Gomershaw, and also Senator Gorse as well. Senator, thank you for the answers to the challenging questions. You know you're going to expect them, and I'm sure there's more to come later today for challenging questions as well. And so we look forward to seeing you a little bit later on. Between 12 and 1 today, I'm going to forward promote this. I'm delighted that the Minister for External Relations, Senator Ian Gorse, will be with us. The Minister for Economic Development, Senator Lyndon Farnham. The Minister for Home Affairs, Conatable Len Norman. The Minister for the Environment, Deputy John Young. The Minister for the Infrastructure, Deputy Kevin Lewis, and the Assistant Environment Minister, Deputy Gregory Guida, will be joining us as well. And we will have a Q&A session between 12 and 1. You would probably want to get onto that, and you can do. If you go to the Brexit, beyond the gov.je site, Beyond Brexit, and go down to the schedule, then you can register for that, and that can be watched actually on YouTube. And that's going to be hosted by a proper professional rather than me. Gary Burgess will be in the chair on behalf of the Jersey Chamber of Commerce to host that live from the studio that's there. 3CI, thank you very much indeed for your technical assistance today, and to the government comms department, to Christian and Matthew, who've been behind the scenes making sure things have operated particularly well. Thanks to our panel. Thanks to you for watching. We look forward to seeing you between 12 and 1 today for the Q&A. And until then, from all in the team of Beyond Brexit, have a very good Friday morning. Thank you.